Hey guys, what's up? It is week 423. Let's just jump right into the reviews for you. The first one up is from Arrow Video, and this is Swordfish. This movie originally came out in 2001. It's a 4K here, and I actually skipped Swordfish. I think I had an old Snapper DVD, the old Warner Brothers kind of Snapper DVDs, and it was kind of a strange mixture of cast. You know, some like older classic actors and some, I wouldn't call them like up-and-comers, but you know, they weren't as big as, you know, John Travolta's the main kind of villain in the movie. And at the late 80s and 90s, you know, early 2000s, Travolta was going through that whole I'm a better bad guy kind of deal, you know what I mean, with Face Off and Broken Arrow. So he got pretty good at it. And he's decent in this one. He plays like this, you guess you call him a kind of international, kind of crazy terrorist, but he is altruistic in his own mind. We also have Hugh Jackman in here, who plays like a world-class hacker. That's right, 2011, 2001. So we have like a lot of the dated technology hacker kind of stuff going on. Don Cheadle is the FBI or some kind of special agent. And then we have Halle Berry as well, who may not be as you think she is. There's also some roles in here. A lot of familiar faces, but kind of the one I think most people would know is big fans of character actors would be Vinnie Jones. He's one of the henchmen for Travolta. A lot of the agents are also familiar faces and everything like that. This one definitely has the editing style and the looks of the early 2000s kind of stuff. It's produced by Joel Silver, so you can expect a lot of fucking explosions. Silver and all those kind of crazy movies like that. Silver produced a lot of good movies, a lot of high-octane action. Remember that kind of phrases like that, like high-octane, and you're just like, okay. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it is, really. So I didn't see this when it came out. I had heard iffy kind of things about it. Obviously, Hugh Jackman went on to be a huge star after being Wolverine and a million other movies. I've always been a fan of Hugh Jackman. Travolta is a hot and cold actor definition for me. Sometimes he's phenomenal and like Blowout, or Blowout, or something like Face Off. He's good in, but you know he's a real hot and cold actor. He'll do amazing performances in certain movies, and then he'll turn around and do something like crummy movie like Punisher, where I never thought he was great. But, you know, a lot of it's the source material. But he's good in this. He's fun in this, and he always takes kind of big swings. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Don Cheadle's good, but a little underutilized. If you see Don Cheadle in some of his earlier stuff like Devil in a Blue Dress, he's phenomenal in that, and later he'd get some more kind of juicier roles, meatier roles. Here he's kind of your standard kind of hot-headed kind of agent, cop kind of style thing. So it opens up with something to kind of pull you in with this kind of a really crazy kind of terrorist attack. It definitely pulls the rug out from under your feet, because you think, are they talking about a movie production here? Or is this kind of an argument between producers? And then you realize it's some like high-level terrorist attack with bombs and explosions. And then we kind of go back 3 days ago. We learn our main key players, like I pointed them out. One's Hugh Jackman, and he's a hacker who's struggling to get his child back. His wife has become like this big porn star married to like a porn king. So he wants his daughter out of there. He's been in trouble for hacking stuff earlier. And Halle Berry approaches him and offers him $100,000 to meet with John Travolta, who is this supposed huge like kind of terrorist kind of guy. And he hires Hugh Jackman to break into like this government system to steal billions of dollars. And he ends up working for like a politician and Sam Shepard. So, you know, that's kind of the plot of the movie. What happens is there's kind of, these little like things where who's going to get caught, who's not going to get caught. And honestly, we go back between Don Cheadle and their relationship with Hugh Jackman and all this kind of stuff like this. And I will say that it is pretty clever how it's written, how you end up kind of like Hugh Jackman ends up kind of on top in reality, because you're thinking, how the fuck is he going to get out of this situation and not be arrested? All this kind of stuff like that. There is an amazing kind of chase scene in these SUVs where there's these heavy-duty machine guns, high-octane action machine guns going on, and everybody's just getting blasted and wasted. There's some CGI that's dated. Of course, it's early 2000s, but a lot of the action's practical, and I miss practical action like this with like kind of big explosions and squibs, some real danger to it. There is an absolute insane scene that seems like it might be out of a Hong Kong movie where they lift kind of this vehicle by like kind of a air transplant, like this kind of heavy-duty plane, and it's insane. But the action's solid. The technology's dated, but of course the look is obviously dated. And I don't know how to explain this to people, but if you were to have to say, guess where this movie's made, I know it's shot in like I think in the like LA area, but it feels so Australian. I don't know how to explain it. It feels like an Australian director with a bunch of fucking money. And I don't mean it as an insult or anything, because when I say they tend to have this kind of like greenish look to it, if that makes any sense. Well, there's another movie that came out in 2005 called Feed, which is much more low budget, and it has a lot of the technology hacking, thrilling stuff going on in it too, and it has the same kind of green, kind of blue hint to it. I don't know what it was about the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, where the technology-based movies, these hacker thriller kind of deals that involve that, were always like, well, we got to have this weird kind of bluish or greenish tint over the entire thing. Maybe it's kind of like fits with the number scheme or something like that. But Swordfish looked pretty damn good, and it sounded really good. But I actually enjoyed it, and I didn't know what to expect. For this movie, like I said, I skipped it when it came out because it was a little iffy. John Travolta's hair and goatee and stuff is absolutely ridiculous in there. But he's probably changed his character numerous times. There's a lot of like dance club scenes. This is a movie that within 5 years it was instantly dated, right? It's so much that kind of techno club, like computer genetics bullshit kind of hacking stuff. But the action's good. The script is pretty solid as well, although dated. The terrorist act in the beginning that comes back around at the end is actually pretty ballsy and insane. Overall, I thought this was pretty solid. I think Hugh Jackman, it's not his finest performance, but he's solid. He's decent in it. Halle Berry's decent and solid in it as well. I think that everybody's decent. I think John Travolta does actually the best performance in the movie. I think it's a win for Travolta. He's a little goofy and silly in it, but his character is supposed to be. And the motives are actually kind of crazy. And you definitely could see some kind of terrorist doing this kind of activity at this point now. It's a terrorist that is actually focusing on stopping terrorism by being the ultimate terrorist and actually creating fear within a terrorist. There we go. But as far as the special features go, we have a 4K, of course, HDR10 compatible, commentary by the director Dominic Sena, Racetrack hacker, brand new interview with composer Paul Oakenfold, how to design a tech heist, a brand new interview with production designer Jeff Munn. HBO first look Swordfish promotional behind the scenes featurette, effects and focus, the flying bus, a promotional featurette detailing how the film's iconic climactic scene was created, Planet Rock Club Reel, a music video by the film's composer Paul Oakenfold, Swordfish and conversation promotional featurette with interviews from cast and crew members including Hugh Jackman, John Travolta, Halle Berry, Don Cheadle, and Sam Shepard, director Dominic Sena, and producer Joel Silver. 2 alternate endings with optional commentary by director Dominic Sena. Yeah, the ending is pretty different. There's kind of like a little twist. I don't know what to call it necessarily. They do kind of, I don't know, I'd say they kind of choreograph to you, know that something like that's going to happen, but you'd have to. Theatrical trailer, double-sided fold-out poster featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Tommy Pocket, illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writing on the film by Priscilla Page, an article from American cinematographer about the film's opening sequence, which is actually a pretty nice, tight, like kind of close shot on Travolta, and we have like the shoulders, and the director in the commentary mentions like, I wanted to get coverage of that, but I felt it was so much better just keeping the characters' shoulders in the shot because I thought this worked really well, and then we pull back and the situation's completely different, which was smart and a very intelligent thing for the director to do. I think obviously thought about the things. As far as the new features are concerned, I believe the commentary is new, but the Racetrack hacker, a brand new interview with composer Paul Oakenfold is new, and the how to design a tech heist brand new interviews of those 2 are the new ones, and I watched those for sure. I haven't watched the old supplemental stuff, but yeah, 4K here, nice release of Swordfish. This is a movie that I skipped out when it originally came out, but going back, like I say this over and over again, a lot of the movies from the 90s or early 2000s that we thought were just average films, average to good, are pretty good now. They hold up a lot better. I don't know if it's film, or I don't know if I'm just old or have some nostalgia, or just maybe nostalgia for stuff shot on film and real explosions or something along the lines. But Swordfish, check it out. Sounds like it's up your alley. It's not a masterpiece, but it's fun. It's a product of its time, and I think you guys may dig it. Okay, the next one here is from Arrow Video as well. This is 1970, and this is The Invisible Swordsman from Dai Pictures. Now, in Japan, there was the kind of big companies, Toei, Toho, Nikatsu, and Dai. Those are the 4 big ones that come to mind for me. Dai, I can't remember when they actually stopped making films, but probably not too far after this. I can't remember 100%. But there's a special feature on here. I'm talking about the special features first, but here we go. A special feature on here that mentions why Dai closed down, and they go into details about that kind of stuff and losing their stars, dying, and other kind of aspects like that. But Invisible Swordsman, of course, it's a period piece here, and we have this wimpy kind of guy who doesn't want to follow in the steps of his father, who's an amazing swordsman, who is just somebody who protects the village, all this kind of stuff, well respected, and he's just whining and crying, which is rare to see in a Japanese film, right? Because of the honor in a lot of these characters and things like that. So he's made immediately a major coward in here, and he just doesn't want to train anymore. He can't take it anymore. He begs for mercy from his senseis and all that kind of stuff like that. But they do not give him mercy. But regardless, he just is not cut out for this kind of deal. Then one night, there's these group of bandits that are going around, and they're like killing and stealing a lot of things. And our poor, guy's father is killed. When he finds this out, he vows to get revenge, but he really can't do it on his own. So during this process, he has this kind of like crazy dream hallucination deal, which turns out to be some sort of reality where he's seeing his father kind of do the whole river of death thing, go across the river, and there's this guy, spirit of the dead, talking to him a little bit. And he questions him, and he wants to speak to his father. We had that whole kind of classic mythology, like I think it's the Greeks would do it, and as the commentary says, a bunch of different cultures all believe that kind of deal. Maybe that's somebody else. It's one of the features mentions that, and of course that's true, right? We have multiple crossing that river. I know Valhalla and stuff. A lot of the soldiers' death will be put into rivers and stuff like that, or bodies of water. But so he witnesses his father basically being taken by the spirit of death. And this spirit of death becomes kind of like a comical character that pops up throughout the entire movie. And he runs into another spirit who's kind of a lying guy who's like, I'm going to help you get your revenge, get your justice for your father. And he tells him to track down these three kind of herbs all around different locations. So we have kind of like a little journey that happens at first. And you're like, oh, this is kind of fun, kind of cute, kind of fast-paced, incredibly fast-paced. And he finds all these ingredients, and they're supposed to turn him invisible. He can turn his kimono invisible as well. But after this whole opening and stuff, it becomes more like a family kids movie at this point. The whole thing actually has the tone of it, but you don't realize it until about the first kind of act's over, and you're like, oh, this is more for family oriented, a little bit different than their other stuff. Although I mean, Damojin would be fine for family as well by Dai. But as it progresses, it kind of becomes this repetitive thing. We learn of these kind of bullies in the town, and you're trying to figure out their identity. Are they the thieves? And of course they kind of are. It's kind of that simplistic thing. And he starts to kind of search at night in the invisible swords thing. He's got like 3 times to do it. And everybody knows he's a coward, but he starts to kind of mess with these goons and everything. And it's going to have this big climax where there actually is a couple deaths here. But, the actual death, I think I like that because our character actually doesn't kill anyone until that final moment where like he kind of gets his revenge and everything like that. I guess if this was an American movie from like maybe the 70s they would have done it, but it's so odd, like in a family friendly movie aimed at kids, if there's like a murder and revenge at the end that's justified. It's just, I guess, a difference in cultures, especially in a period piece thing. So overall, The Invisible Swordsman has a lot of comic beats in here. There's a couple comical characters that work for the main baddie that are ridiculously like interacting back and forth. One is like kind of nerdy with glasses. Like their food gets stolen, and there's this whole skit like that. The one thing is it's repetitive where the character will be invisible, encounter the bad guys, run away, and encounter the bad guys the next night invisible. And it's very, very much repetitive in that kind of aspect. There's other characters trying to figure out if he's the invisible swordsman, all that kind of stuff like that. Overall, I think this is decent. I think it's fun. I don't think it's an amazing picture. I do think it's a little of an odd man out for the time and for the company that produced it, so I do think it is kind of a curious kind of film. It's incredibly dark, as they point out in the commentary, and they say that in the commentary, it's like, I'm kind of shocked that they made it this dark because it would have never really eventually had much of a home life on TV or anywhere else except maybe in the theater, and it's kind of a ballsy thing to shoot the movie incredibly dark, because in Blu-ray you could see it fine, it looks good, it's nice kind of cinematography, but any other way it probably would be very difficult to see, so it was kind of a creative choice that was pretty ballsy. As far as the special features, we have a brand new audio commentary by author and Asian culture expert Jonathan Clemens. The Invisible People, a brand new interview with film critic Kim Newman on history of invisibility in cinema. Of course, he mentions the 2 previous Japanese invisible movies that I think Arrow put out. I remember the second one being Invisible Man versus like the Human Fly. He mentions the Invisible Man series, Hollow Man, all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah, I don't think he mentions Invisible Maniac. What's up, Cam Newman? I'm just kidding, he might. But then we have Phantom Fighter, brand new interview with film critic, Japanese cinema expert Jasper Sharp, and he goes into kind of the why Dai closed, what this fits in the Dai's kind of catalog and stuff like that. And then we have trailer, image gallery, and then we have commissioned artwork by Yolan Yates, and illustrated collector's booklet featuring writings on the films by Zach Davidson. So, Invisible Swordsman. A very comical, goofy, kind of silly, lighthearted movie. A little repetitive, but worth your time. A good time waster, if that makes any sense. It's not an insulting way to say it, but I think it's a fun time waster. Okay, this next one here is from Deaf Crocodile, and this is I Married a Strange Person. This is an animated film. It's like 70 minutes long. It's by a director called Bill Plympton, and he did a couple other ones. I think he's pretty famous for his animation, and I've seen animation in this style. I probably might have seen something he's done maybe before this, but I love this thing. Deaf Crocodile does a lot of Eastern European films, a lot of animation, and this one is one of my favorite releases they've ever done. So I don't know how to go about this movie. It's very when you kind of have these puns, like a lot of word puns that are brought to real life kind of imagery and stuff, and it becomes incredibly hilarious. So in the very beginning, we have these two birds that are having sex, and it's kind of like very sexual, very graphic, very goofy and weird and absurdist and graphic is all I can explain it. Sexual, absurdist kind of craziness and very surreal as well. But we have these two birds that are having sex in the air, and they end up crashing and hitting this satellite dish, which ends up shocking this guy's back of his neck, which creates this kind of gland in the back of his neck, which gives him these kind of superpowers. He becomes almost like he has the Infinity Gauntlet from the Marvel movies, like the comic books like Doctor Doom or something, where he can do whatever he thinks. He's also just been newly married, and he has his wife, and they're kind of on their honeymoon, I guess you would say. So right away, weird things start to happen incredibly. And there's a nutso scene where him and his wife have sex, and he is controlling all these different things that are happening, and all around the house, and like these inanimate objects start to partake in it, where they become alive, having sex with them, and it is just a wild, weird scene. And for like the first half of this movie, his wife actually hates him and despises him. I Married a Strange Person, there by the title, and she kind of wants out, especially when she visits her parents. And it's a very weird scene because her parents are just awful, horrible people, and they're just weird and bizarre. It's kind of like they remind me of the parents in Bad Boy Bubby when he goes and visits his when Bad Boy Bubby's with his girlfriend and she has those awful parents, or something like Eraserhead where the parents are just awkwardly weird. That should be like its own little kind of like subgenre scenes, right, where you go and visit in-laws and they're just fucking nuts and weird, or like your girlfriend boyfriend's parents and they're just bizarre. So it's like that kind of scene like that. But what happens is there's this totalitarian kind of corporation that's friendly and happy, and they have this little spokesperson that's really wacky and weird, but he ends up being like a real person at the same time, and he's always on the TVs dancing and happy. It's like a song. It reminds me of like a Ren and Stimpy or something crazy like that. But everybody's obsessed with this, and this company is evil, obviously. It's this big kind of corporation. They're controlling a bunch of things. So when basically this guy gets on television through his talents, and he helps up this stand-up comedian in one of the wildest routines where he's not funny, but he makes him literally fall apart on stage. It brings the attention of this corporation because this guy sells them out and becomes a villain. So after a while, this group of villains is after his little gland on the back of his head because they want the ultimate power. But certain people cannot have this, obviously, right? You know, because although he is just your everyday guy, that amazing amount of power that he has still causes some problems and craziness. But he's living the best life he can. He's not an evil person. But when you see other characters get this gland, they kind of implode on themselves or completely destroy themselves in the weirdest ways. But what happens is kind of this weird kind of war to get this gland, which involves like this general who's actually turned into like a lizard man. But yeah, it just says a lot of things in that kind of way. It does have a lot of social messaging and things like that are perfect. It's absolutely hilarious. The visual puns are amazing. The animation is like highly intriguing and touching, but also incredibly gross at the same time. I really enjoyed it. I thought I Married a Strange Person was a lot of fun. I think it's tremendous. And as far as the features are concerned, we do have a couple here. We have two shorts. Guide Dog, 6 minutes, 2006, which is adorable. This Guide Dog, I think it's a sequel to the original Guide Dog story. I'm not 100% sure. I think the commentary or something said that. But basically new skin for this release, and basically what it is this dog. He's going to be a guide dog to these blind people, and he's always nervous, but something always goes wrong in the most ridiculous ways, and he like cries. It's really funny. And then we have The Loneliest Spotlight, with narrated by Patton Oswalt, who plays the Stoplight. And he basically talks about why he made this in the commentary too, and stuff like that, or the interviews. I can't remember. And he was in this country, the director, and he saw this one stoplight in the middle of fucking nowhere, and he's like, yeah. So he wrote this really cute, kind of touching little thing with narration by Patton Oswalt about it. And he talks even about how he met Patton Oswalt. Now he got him to do the voice and stuff. Really cute animation. And then we have a new video interview with the director Bill Plympton and making of Strange Person, rated by Dennis Bartok of Deaf Crocodile. That's a good one. I think that's about 40 minutes or so, if I'm not mistaken. A new commentary track by animation producer and podcaster Adam Ratkoff, podcaster and film critic James Hancock, and longtime Plympton collaborator John Hollerid of Plympton Studios. And he talks about working with them and kind of getting his files and all these kind of animations in organized and stuff like that. But this is great. If you love animation, this is an absolute must. If you were into the 90s kind of wacky, kind of X-rated, I wouldn't even call it X-rated, but I guess it is. It's probably not rated. He probably didn't get it rated. I don't think he did. But I love this thing. This is I Married a Strange Person, Deaf Crocodile. Excellent, excellent little fun movie here. Good stuff. Okay, this next one here is from Fun City Editions, and this stars Rosetta Arquette and Vincent Spano. This is directed by John Sayles. I think this is the first film that John Sayles directed. John Sayles, I always knew from writing a lot of like bigger movies and stuff like that, but I didn't know him from his directed work. I know he's famous for Lone Star and Matwin and things like that, Criterion kind of caliber movies here, but I knew him because I'm the troll that I am from writing The Howling and Alligator and of course Piranha, which are three movies that I love, especially Alligator. Always had a fondness for that. But John Sayles is a really good writer and he puts a lot of thought into his movies. So this one, Baby It's You, he directed this one. It's his directorial debut, and they talk a lot about this movie as being kind of like a lost movie because music rights. It screened. It got good reviews. Everybody who saw it liked it. Although it just had trouble on home video. It didn't really get on home video because of the music rights and things like that. And there's been like a lot of contention with it. And finally it's here with the proper music and everything like that. So this takes place in the 60s. And Rosetta Arquette is like kind of an actress in high school. And she meets with this kind of guy who's into like Frank Sinatra and greaser stuff. And he's dated already in the 60s. And that's Vincent Spano. And he's kind of a mysterious guy. And they start this relationship. And he's an aggressive kind of young guy just from the wrong side of town, while she comes from like a family of like kind of a nice Jewish family where they have some money and things like that. So we're going to have this kind of classic relationship here. And I wouldn't even really call it a coming of age story, you know what I mean? It is and it isn't. You know, it's a slice of life of this kind of this actress and stuff like that, and her relationship with this guy and going through high school, and the second part is college and stuff, and we follow her. And the first half of the movie, she's kind of like a popular actress in her school and stuff, and as she moves to like the college, it's almost like everything's completely changed. The special features John Sayles, I think it's a interview with him. He talks about just kind of the changing in time from the 60s to later, you know, and that stuff like that about marijuana and stuff when they get to college and how different it was from high school. He's like, back in the day, people only like a couple people were smoking weed in high school, and then by the time it was college area, almost everybody was doing it. So he talks a lot about that kind of detail and stuff, and there's a lot of people that were involved behind the scenes. It was actually produced by double header company, which is what they called the company, and it was produced by actors. Griffin Dunn was one of them who produced this. I can't remember the other actress. It's like a big actress too. I feel like I'm fucking dropping the ball here. Amy Robinson yeah, there we go. Producers Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson, and they talk about like kind of like writing this and getting this whole working on this movie and stuff like that, and getting it all together, and even cutting out their own scenes. Everybody, John Sayles and stuff, their own scenes getting cut out of the movie, but when actors are going to produce something, they're going to have a little bit more, like, I don't want to say nuance, that's a word I overuse, but it's going to be a little bit different from your run-of-the-mill stuff. And they mentioned that in this one, actually, they wanted to make it more of a sex comedy in the editing and things like that, but they kind of shoved against that. So what happens is it becomes this kind of standout movie now. Like, you watch it, and it's a sincere drama that feels real, that feels very lived in, and the set decoration and set design and all that stuff is great. And now, there's nothing wrong with sex comedies of the 80s. I mean, some people would say so, but you know that they are. It's like Revenge of the Nerds and Porky's. Those movies are memorable and great, and stuff like that. But this one stands out as being something a little bit different. And again, Fun City has that weird kind of grab on the releases, right? Like where they have that hold of these movies that aren't really. They're very much just dramas and stuff like that, and slice of life movies, hangout movies, if you will. but they're all just really well done, like really exceptionally well acted. Like last week I covered Lifeguard, and that's another one that has that lived-in kind of great nuanced feel with this character kind of looking and reflecting on his life and that thing like that. There's this here too, and it's essentially just kind of this last dance or this last moment shared between these two people that probably will never really see each other again. I do want to mention that Frank Vincent's in here, and this is, you know, he's got a nice little role in here that's pretty funny. He's got a lot of good dialogue. Vincent Spano is a character that's, I think he's a realistic character, because there's a lot of times where he's like, oh, geez, I hate this guy, I can't stand this guy, and that happens a lot with both the main characters. Like, why are they being so awful and terrible? But it feels like there's some real put forth thought into the human psychology of these characters. It feels like, why do people do that? Why do they do that? Why did they do that? And sometimes, a lot of times, you're like, why did I do that? You know, and I feel like there's a part where she gets drunk and things like that, and she starts to kind of talk like, you know, somebody that she knew, Vincent Spano back there. Matthew Modine is also in here. Overall, I think Baby Issues a really good drama, really solid drama, really good set design, looked great. And it was made. It was supposed to take place in Jersey. I can't remember. It's supposed to take place in, but they filmed it in Jersey, but not the right city, if that makes any sense to anybody. I can't remember all the details in the commentaries. As far as the special features, we have a commentary by Bill Ackerman, who he used to have a podcast. I can't remember, Reoccurring Characters, if I'm not mistaken. And his podcast was really good and really informative. He did have guests on there. This commentary is packed full of information. He is an encyclopedia towards this thing and did a lot of research, and he does a great job on the commentary. And then we also have new video interviews with director John Sayles, producer Griffin Dunn, Amy Robinson, and actors Rosetta Arquette, Vincent Spano, and Matthew Modine, who's another good actor here. So, nice release. I would recommend checking this one out if you've not seen it. If you like drama films and slice of life kind of movies, Baby It's You. Good stuff. Check it out. Next up in The Terror in the Fog, the Krimi collection here from Eureka Films is the last in there. The Racetrack Murders on the second disc here. If you can see it, you'll see it in the video here. I'm an idiot doing that. That doesn't make any sense, but you guys will see it. The Racetrack Murders. So, yeah, this one is a lot of fun. Again, they talk about kind of being based on a book of Brian Edgar Wallace, the son of Edgar Wallace, whatever. It's kind of mixed up deal. I don't think it was actually genuinely based off book, although they lifted stuff from books to get here. But this one's a lot of fun. I don't think I've watched a Racetrack Krimi or any racetrack-oriented films. I think what's the one that's really good, the Kubrick one, the Killing. I think, is that a dog race or a horse race or something like that? But, yeah, so what happens is we have this kind of rich family here, and, you know, so you got this gothic feel too, right? And they have this racehorse. This racehorse is worth a lot, and it's pretty much determined it's going to win the race. Everybody says this damn thing's going to win the race, and what happens is the patriarch of the family is murdered one night. And it looks at first like a jockey is killed, and everybody's like, oh, it's an accident. It wasn't an accident. And then this guy is murdered. And we have a bunch of these people that are in town staying here, relatives, all these kind of things. And we have this guy who's kind of mysterious in there. He's supposed to be a painter to paint the horse or some shit like that. And you're like, eh. And he has like a live-in nurse that follows him because he's on a diet. So you're like, very suspicious, very strange. Besides that, we have like a whole group of characters like the butler and other people, unsavory figures that are all around the kind of thing like here. And the person who died, the patriarch's guy who died, has a sister who has a lot of the hilarious lines because she's like this very waspy type character who's like, oh, these poor people, like, we can expect murders and things like this to happen elsewhere, but here it's so tragic, so rude that somebody would die here. Just absolute kind of horrible person in the most waspy kind of way. But so we have all these characters, and honestly, I really didn't necessarily know who the killer was going to be. They set up a lot of the kind of stuff here, and there's a lot of kind of like bad guys within here. So we also have this criminal that got off scot-free for a murder. He painted out some other guys. So that kind of is another subplot in here too. And he's blackmailing the nephew, who's now in charge of the horse, to lose the race. So we have all sorts of things like this. The AKA name of this movie is The Seventh Victim. So within the first like half an hour, like 4 people die. And I was like, this is a very breakneck speed of killing people. And, you know, after a couple of the murders, they no longer look like accidents. So we have people that are in love with other people, all this kind of stuff like that. And the people just keep getting picked off and picked off and picked off until we're at the very end, and we have the big finale at the racetrack and whatnot. And somebody's got to ride the horse that you wouldn't expect. Overall, this one's a lot of fun. It's very fast-paced. It's very easy to follow. One of the favorites of the releases here. We do have a commentary track on here. One of the favorites of this box set here. We do have a commentary track. Let me find it. Who's on this one? We have a commentary by Kevin Loynes and Jonathan Rigby, which is pretty solid, pretty good. But there's also a Tim Lucas and Stephen Bissett discussion over the movie. That's like 84 minutes long, and they talk about all 6 of the movies that are in the set, every movie in the set, and they kind of go over them for like 15 minutes, and it's very informative and interesting and stuff like that. So that's good to hear their thoughts on all these movies, that the ones they didn't get to talk about, and Krimis as a whole, which I enjoyed. So yeah, overall I enjoyed this set. I'm going to be honest, the first one, The Curse of the Yellow Snake, I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy this. That one was just probably the worst in the set to start off with. I just felt like it was the weakest, but Phantom of Soho was great. Monster of London was really good. Racetrack Murders was fun. The Strangler of Blackmore Castle I also enjoyed. What am I missing? I'm probably missing one of these though. Yeah, The Mad Executioners was also good. So I mean, like, the whole set's pretty solid except that first Curse of the Black Snake. I'd recommend it if you're into Krimis or you want to see maybe where some gialli inspiration came from, then check out this set here. Terror in the Fog, the Wallace Krimi box set at CCC, which is a company that also produced a lot of those Dr. Mabuse movies, or all of those Dr. Mabuse movies from the 60s. So CCC, it's very much in the vein of the Dr. Mabuse stuff. So if you enjoyed those, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't find some love within this set as well from Mrparka Films here. Check it out. Okay, this next one here is Dangerous Animals, and this is an IFC Shudder one. It was in theaters, so I was like, I'm going to check it out, by the director of The Loved Ones and The Devil's Candy. 2 pretty solid Australian horror films, and it's really rare when you see an Australian horror film come into theaters. We just had Bring Her Back, so this one I was like, oh, very cool. Go to the theater, local theater, to see it, and this stars Jai Courtney. Who's it? He looked. This actor in the trailer looks super familiar. I was like, yeah, it looks like that guy, but I was shocked that it was actually him, because I seen him pop up in the sequel to the Suicide Squad, and I thought his very short performance in that was really good. And I seen him pop up in the Terminator, and there's something about him that I liked. I thought he had a lot of charisma, but in this movie, he's fucking amazing. He's the best part of this one. Dangerous Animals here. If you see the trailer, it's straight out of a plot of a 1970s exploitation movie where we have this kind of insane person who picks up women and takes them on a boat and feeds them to fucking sharks, right? With the whole idea, he's like a diving kind of guy, a swim with the sharks kind of guy who takes people out, but he's feeding these women to sharks. So he's absolutely insane. He's got kind of a, I don't want to spoil this, but Leslie Nielsen kind of thing going on from Creepshow, if that makes any sense to anybody. But so this is basically the plot. It's very cat and mouse in a lot of ways, and I like when I went to see this, the plot alone, I was like, this is going to be one of these movies that's solid throughout the entire movie. It's going to have a couple showstoppers, going to be very kind of slow paced, like maybe Anthropophagus, right, where it's like, this is pretty fucking tedious, but there's these 2 scenes in there where you're like, oh, there's enough atmosphere and cool shit happening where you're like, I like this movie. So Dangerous Animals isn't necessarily that, and I do think it's a little bit better paced than something like Anthropophagus. But we have Jai Courtney, who's the villain, and we have the lead actress, who I don't know, who's like a big surfer. She loves surfing, and she's kind of like a keep to herself kind of girl. But these are kind of the 2 people this whole movie, it puts rest on their shoulders. I mean, not saying like it's not well made. It's well shot. There's a lot of beautiful shots, of course, of, like the setting sun and all that kind of stuff like that. There's a really cool shot in the very beginning where we go underwater and swim with the sharks and have this cool like kind of scene like that. So there's a lot to offer. It's a well made movie. Obviously from the other 2, the 2 previous movies that this director did, obviously it's going to be obviously, right? It's going to actually be something that's worth watching. It's going to be a technically well done movie. I was happy with it. And this movie could be really tedious, really boring, but I think they did a really good job with it, with the kind of story, and it doesn't get too boring, and there's the pacing is well done, and it's got 2 great performances in there. One in particular is the villain, and his MO is kind of one of those ones I've never seen anyone else quite do. But I'd recommend this one if you're into shark movies. This is a little bit of different shark film, right? It's not your chibi sci-fi movie. It's not your fun Italian Jaws ripoff. It's not even a Jaws style film. It's its own thing. It's more of a psychological horror film where we have a couple really nasty scenes. It's not a high body count movie, but there is a couple kills in here, and I recommend it. Check out Dangerous Animals. I wouldn't call it a nice surprise. I would say better than expected, worth watching. I wouldn't even say better than expected. I just had a feeling this one's going to be solid. It is a good movie. I would recommend checking it out in the theater if you can. Okay, here we go from Vinegar Syndrome. The Dark Half, directed by George Romero, based on a Stephen King book. Originally made in 1990, not released until 1993. Shelved because it was produced by Orion Films and they went bankrupt during the time. So yeah, George Romero could never get a break. This is the last film that George Romero shot in Pittsburgh. This is the last studio film that George Romero really did. And then he would go to Canada and make his other films, you know, like Bruiser and Land of the Dead and things like that, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. But, you know, George Romero is one of the all-time great horror directors of, you know, the times. Night of the Living Dead in 68, then Dawn of the Dead, Crazies, Day of the Dead films. He pretty much gave us the modern zombie. But George Romero is my favorite all-time director. So seeing this on 4K, I was pretty excited for it. You know, Stephen King had said that George Romero was his favorite collaborator. They had written a bunch of scripts together that never ever really got released, unfortunately, or made, I should say made. They made Creepshow together in 1982. He wrote the script, a lot of the stories, and worked on Creepshow too as well. Romero and King wrote the stuff, wrote a lot of the stories. So they worked together a few times here. So doing The Dark Half was a pretty interesting one, like kind of a big studio picture. The movie before this he did Monkey Shines, which Orion worked on as well, put out and everything like that. Romero had a terrible time, but he thought things may be different on this one. That's not necessarily the case. He had a lot of his original Pittsburgh kind of people helping on this movie, so it was kind of the family affair and everything like that. But some of the things were a little bit different. Like he had to pick from a list of cinematographers, and he mentions the commentary of the cinematographer he didn't get along with great, but he got great. He actually filmed really well and got some really great shots, and I think this is one of Romero's best looking films in terms of professional stuff here. So The Dark Half is a wild film starring Timothy Hutton. And it follows a writer, and this is kind of based somewhat on Stephen King's real life here, right? We had that Richard Bachman kind of writer that he used to write other stories under, and he wanted to see if Stephen King could actually sell books just because, not by name alone. So, and then somebody threatened to kind of out him that it was the same person. So this is kind of this story. Timothy Hutton plays both these kind of dual characters, if you will, those doppelgangers of each other, or the evil doppelganger and the regular. And the Thaddeus and George Stark is the villainous one. So he writes these kind of books. He writes these really well-acclaimed, critically acclaimed, well-done books that don't really sell well. And then under a false Paul name, kind of his Dark Half character in real life, he kind of writes under George Stark. He writes these sleazy, trashy, mean-spirited fucking crime novels or whatever the hell they are. So basically what happens is we learn in the very beginning that this kid had a tumor in his head, and you know, it was taken out, and kind of like these birds, every time the tumor was messed with, you would hear birds in his ear. So crazy, weird kind of mythology like that. And now he's grown up, and he is going to be outed by Robert Joy, classic character, out to go on to be in Land of the Dead by George Romero. And he threatens to out him. So him and his wife and his kind of agents get together, and they decide, you know, let's just come out and say this character and have this whole big kind of publicity stunt where we film this fake tombstone and bury him and all this kind of shit like that. So it's all this big kind of stunt and everything like that. Rotunda Olda is one of his agents, and Busmalis from the television show Oz from HBO was his other agent. They were like an old married couple. Good performances there. This movie actually has a really, really strong cast in here. Besides that, we also have Royal Dano's last performance, one of my favorite character actors from things like Ghoulies 2, Messiah of Evil, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Drum. Just a really strong actor. He's good at this as like a gravedigger in his typical Royal Dano kind of, oh, you're crazy. No, what's the one? He's like, I want my Pooh Bear. Yeah, there is Royal Dano, kind of crazy kind of guy there. He's great in this. So it just is riddled with really good character actors. Timothy Hutton is a method actor, and he plays both performances, The Dark Half, because after they bury this kind of, this fake kind of publicity stunt, George Stark comes to life for real, and he wants, you know, Thaddeus's life. So he comes after him. He starts killing everybody that partook in that ritual, anybody in his life that he can kill. Michael Rooker's also in here as this kind of local cop in the kind of main area. I love Michael Rooker. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. He's good in this. He plays the hero. Just it seems like he just does it so easy. He just seems so natural in this role, and he does a good job here. And he cuts Thaddeus more slack than he should, Thad. But we also have Julie Harris in here as a kind of like a mentor kind of style character. So really good cast, really good set pieces for the murders. Especially there's one character who's actually in Silver Bullet, and he plays this kind of what is this role? He's a journalist, and he gets a really nasty death where like the lights in the ceiling are going out and it's going blue, red, blue, red, blue, red. And that murder scene is really well constructed. In fact, there's a lot of nice murder set pieces. There's a name for a title for a movie, which is the movie. I just want to kind of laugh if anybody's never seen murder set pieces. But there's a lot of great murder set pieces in The Dark Half. And it still has that Pittsburgh flavor where it's filmed around and things like that, even though it's supposed to take place in like New England area kind of deal. But The Dark Half does kind of fall apart a little bit at the end because Orion Pictures ran out of money and they had these test screenings and they weren't happy with everything, and there's some really crummy CGI. There is some good practical effects in here. There's some really strong performances in here. It's very Stephen King. It is very Stephen King, if that makes any sense to anybody. Anybody's read the books or like seen any of his films, it does have that kind of whole, very much, allegorical to his life kind of style thing. I think that The Dark Half is a solid movie. I think it's a good movie. I think it's just, unfortunately, it's also one of those things that made Romero not want to make studio films anymore. And he talks about in the commentary how much he was working for New Line and just writing scripts for years and years and years and made the most money he's ever made, but none of those movies ever got made, which is incredibly sad because I would have loved to see 10, 15, 20 more George Romero directed pictures, right? Because most of his movies to me I love. Until we get to a certain point, and it's just the way the films were being made that just really wasn't my thing. I think that Dark Half and Monkey Shines are both solid movies. I don't think they're at the top of his filmography, but I think it's really cool to see him work in the studio system for a little bit, although I think that his best stuff was, his Night, Dawn, Day, Martin, and the Crazies. I think those movies are all phenomenal, and Night Riders, and it's kind of outside the studio system, so those are probably his strongest pictures. Creepshow is kind of more of a studio kind of picture, but, not necessarily either. But I think The Dark Half is well worth your time. If you're interested in Stephen King, if you're interested in doppelganger stories, you're interested in George Romero, Pittsburgh, all that stuff. The score is by Christopher Young, which is awesome because Christopher Young, of course, did the Hellraiser stuff, and the score is a very professional, very well done score. The cinematography is very well done, very different from what he's used to. So it has a lot of the super professional people on this one, as well as a lot of the Pittsburgh people. So it kind of merges those kind of two qualities, which I enjoy both of, in kind of its own way. As far as the special features, we have some of the old archival stuff, like the making of that's 36 minutes with interviews with Romero and Michael Rooker and stuff like that. But it contains a 122-minute featurette of Dark Half, HDR, and 5.1 sound. Sounds pretty damn good. We have the old commentary track with George Romero, which is also with a moderator he's a pretty good moderator, pretty good commentary, to be honest. Then we have some new features, My Roots with Romero, 12-minute interview with first assistant director Nick Mastrandre. What is that? How do you say that? Massandrea, who went on to work on huge films. And then we have went on to work with Wes Craven on a lot of his stuff too. Merchant Ivory cameraman in Pittsburgh, an interview with cinematographer Tony Pierce Roberts, Shadow of the what is it? Did I hear something? Sorry. Sometimes the cameras shut off. Shadows of the Past Locations, The Dark Half, 5 minutes feature on the shooting locations of The Dark Half. This is also cool, very informative as well. George Romero, City of the Dead, 10-minute feature on the shooting locations. This is excerpts from the 1991 broadcast on WQED, Pittsburgh's local PBS station. I enjoyed seeing that. Has Romero's parents in there, which is really cool. And then we have The Sparrows Are Flying Again, a making of. That's the original one from 2014 from Shout Factory. A bunch of people involved with that. And then we have archival making of featurette, electronic press kit, archival interviews, electronic press kit, behind the scenes, deleted scenes, storyboards, image gallery, TV spot, original trailer. So this wasn't exactly an easy film for George Romero to make, working with birds and sparrows and method actors and all that kind of stuff, and producers and studios, but I think that it ended up being a pretty solid movie. Not Stephen King's best stuff, not George Romero's best stuff, but it's still pretty damn good stuff overall. Dark Half. Check it out. Okay, this one here from 1982 is a bizarre film, and this is Britannia Hospital. This is part of a trilogy by Lindsay Anderson, starring Malcolm McDowell and a lot of the other characters and actors in here. The first two being If, which Criterion put out, a late 60s movie, and Oh, Lucky Man. I have not seen those, so this is my first go with Lindsay Anderson, who is a pretty much, very much a cult director, pretty much well-respected too. He was kind of a stage guy. He did a lot of stage plays and stuff like that, but Britannia Hospital was sometimes listed as horror, sometimes listed as not. I decided to dive in. It's definitely definitely a comedy, satire, sci-fi, and I would say there's definitely some body horror involved in Britannia Hospital. This also pertains a lot to British politics and British stuff like that, so 82. And there's a lot of context put in here and stuff like that on the commentary by Sam Deegan, talking about Britain in the 70s, the healthcare system, all that stuff. You kind of have to understand that here. So it takes place in a hospital. It's definitely talking about all the crazy things within a hospital. And as Sam Deegan says in the commentary, the director was kind of an anarchist. So although he probably is very liberal in a lot of ways, he also is going to make fun of absolutely everything within the system of itself, which I could see, and it becomes really funny and insane at the same time. So there's tons of stuff going on here. We have Malcolm McDowell as this underground journalist, along with Mark Hamill and some other guys are trying to break. He's like in the computer thing here. Small role by Mark Hamill. They're trying to get in here and infiltrate and film all this footage and stuff and get it out there at the same time, while a bunch of people are kind of picketing this hospital because at the time, everybody's supposed to get the same health care in this. It's like socialized health care, but there's a lot of rich people who are paying for extra things like that, and there is this kind of not South African, but African kind of like dictator who's staying there to get the best treatment, but he's a monster. He's like a genocidal monster, and he killed a bunch of kids. So everybody's picketing this guy as well there. They don't want general something. And so there's all these people picketing, while at the same time, the entire structure of the building is falling apart. Not structure, but people within the building are falling apart because the queen is coming to visit, and they're having this big ceremony. So all the top heads are there, and everybody's there trying to keep this hospital functioning that are there, but at the same time, like the cooks are refusing to cook. The painters are not, they're taking their sweet ass time. Malcolm McDowell's in here trying to study stuff, and at the top of this, we have this crazy mad surgeon who's a Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein style character who is trying to make his own Frankenstein kind of monster and bring this kind of sentient life where everybody's brain is going to be put in this thing. It's an absolute crazy, weird, fucking bonkers movie with a lot of actors that you recognize right off the bat, a lot of classic British actors who are really good in here. Joan Plowright from Brimstone and Treacle and Drowning by Numbers is in here as kind of like the head of the workers union kind of deal, and she's really excited to see the queen and everything like that. You'll see Robbie Coltrane in here as one of the kind of guys who's about to ride and go nuts. The main kind of guy in the bar from American Werewolf in London is one of the painters. So it's just riddled with tons and tons of character actors, not to mention the stars of the film are pretty pretty much prolific. I don't want to say prolific, but they did a lot of work within British cinema as well. A lot of the actors I'm not super familiar with, but, it's just like these kind of, I'm always the character actor guy, so a lot of the bigger names I don't exactly know, although you look them up and I was like, I've seen 20 movies with this guy, and I'm like, okay, this guy's in here too. So the acting's really good. The insanity is top-notch here. The satire is also great. Just the kind of shit that, like, well, we can't bring these guys in. We haven't had our tea break yet. That kind of shit where it's just like, Jesus Christ. And the commentary is excellent. It's I think Sam Deegan's one of my favorite people who does commentaries because she puts context in there, and she talks enough about the context, she talks enough about what is happening within the movie, she puts her own personal thoughts in there as well, and she talks a lot about the actors and the directors and things like that and the people who made the movie. So it's like an all-around good plethora of mixture of things. Some people do better at one thing or the other. She just kind of mixes in and takes everything and a lot of knowledge within it. I think it's a very strong commentary, and I enjoyed it very much. There's also an interview with Malcolm McDowell talking about working with Lindsay Anderson, and this was before, this is probably for like an old Anchor Bay, maybe a UK release or something like that, because I don't remember Britannia Hospital getting a stateside DVD from Anchor Bay or anything like that. But this is one that didn't do as well as it should have, is what they're saying. It grew some love over time. But, it kind of flopped in the trilogy. It wasn't looked at as well because it has some really grotesque, squeamish kind of stuff going on. It turns to horror definitely at one point in the film when a character is brought back to life and he immediately tries to kill the doctor who did it. But that's just a gory, insane scene, and my jaw almost drops. Like, in this fucking movie it's doing it? And there's also this riot boiling up to it. I actually really like Britannia Hospital. I thought it was great. Not necessarily a horror film, but definitely a cult film, and definitely one to watch for 1982. If you're going through all these kind of cult films and horror-adjacent films, Britannia Hospital is definitely one of them. But I would really recommend this stuff if you like the crazy stuff going on. Wasn't there one, is that Writhing Tongue from 1980 was kind of a hospital kind of horror thing, and I can't remember if that one from 81 or it was from 82 about the really nasty measles, or it was like a virus outbreak that was based on a true story that was 81 or 82. I can't remember. And that was another kind of hospital horror-oriented thing, although this is completely different. This isn't your hospital horror like Halloween 2 or Hospital Massacre or anything like that. This is visiting hours. This is definitely kind of its own like satire. And Sam Deegan does mention The Hospital in the special features as well, which is a movie that I've always wanted to see from 1970, George C. Scott. That's supposed to be completely insane as well. But yeah, it does hit that boiling point where like a guy running the hospital will do absolutely anything to keep this hospital running, including murder. But Britannia Hospital from Kino Lorber, check it out. The Blu-ray, if it's still in print, still maybe they're having a sale coming up, you could probably get it pretty cheap. I'd recommend it. I liked it a lot. Okay, we got a real bizarre one here. No thanks. Coffee makes me nervous. And that is definitely sounds like a title of a giallo comedy from Italy. And that's exactly what it is. There's a couple this year. One doesn't have subtitles, so I probably won't be watching that one. But I did watch No Thanks. Coffee Makes Me Nervous. This is a weird one. Jeez. And it's funny because I look up the director and the producers and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not too familiar with any of these people. They didn't really dabble into the horror or genre stuff as much. Just kind of stuff like that. And even the leads in here aren't people I'm too familiar with. But what we have here is this kind of journalist group that's supposed to cover this festival that's supposed to be in, where is it supposed to be? Naples, Milan, somewhere big in Italy, and there's like this kind of counter movement against it where we don't want this place to change. We want it to stay exactly as it's supposed to stay. So we have like this old guard and this new guard. We have a lot of these performers in here coming in and say we need to update and change all these things, the way of life and all these things. And pretty soon these performers and stuff are starting to get these threatening letters and these weird kind of things are happening to them and stuff like that. So we have these journalists who come in, and it's kind of a pair of them. We have like this bumbling idiot who's kind of the comic relief. The whole movie's goofy and absurd and a lot of silliness, and like this kind of like smoking lady who's like constantly trying to sleep with him and just really kind of follows him around and stuff. And we have these two are kind of the main characters of the film. And they get all tied up and mixed up with these mobsters and a criminal act where they're chasing them around and stuff. And that stuff's a lot less like horror. But the murders in here, there's a couple of them. They are definitely like giallo kind of style spoofs. Especially the first murder, I think, is very much so. And there's a lot of comedy beats and stuff where our lead character is put in the awkward, silly situations where it's just kind of cringy for him. Like, oh, just that kind of stuff. What I think works really well. Overall, I think No Thanks, Coffee Makes Me Nervous is a fun movie. I think it has, it's very Italian at the same time, right? Talking about these kind of old things like that. But there's this really funny moment where one of the characters is like this kind of performer who agrees to do it, but then like he gets these death threats, so he's terrified, and he has all these cops around. They're supposed to be protecting him, so he like fakes being strangled when they're outside to hear if they'll hear him, and they don't, and all that kind of shit. But there's this point that I think is absolutely brilliant that you kind of do when you're absolutely terrified, where he thinks that he doesn't know if the killer's watching him, so he's walking around town like, I'm not going to do the festival now. I decided to drop out of the festival. And there's this like newspaper guy's like, yeah, I saw the paper. He completely does not give a shit anything he's saying, and this guy's hoping that like the killer hears him say all this shit, which is probably the best gag in the entire movie. The reveal is cool. Overall, I think No Thanks, Coffee Makes Me Nervous is fun. I don't know if it's comparable to the other Italian kind of spoofy comedy here, Haunted House. I think No Thanks, Coffee Makes Me Nervous is funnier. I think it's a little bit more unique. I think Haunted House is just a little bit more broad and goofy. I think both are worth watching if you like comedy, and I know that Italy's comedy is not always translated well. I know there's a lot of sex comedies that even guys like Fulci directed that just don't really translate. A lot of people say, oh, I'll have to watch one of them, because I didn't have that many problems with Haunted House or No Thanks, Coffee Makes Me Nervous. I found some humor in them, and I thought they were kind of goofy and silly. I don't know how the sex comedies from the 70s would land with me, but No Thanks, Coffee Makes Me Nervous and Haunted House aren't nearly as unfunny as people made them out to be. But yeah, that's another one from 82. Not exactly horror, but horror adjacent enough, and I'm winding down, so No Thanks, Coffee Makes Me Nervous was definitely one that I just wanted to watch. Okay, we're on our Patreon pick here, and this is No Resistance, released by Saturn's Core. And this is, what year was this made? In the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken. This was made in 1994, which is a crazy year for SOV movies. This is SOV, filmed in Texas. And this is like kind of a weird technological punk rock, crazy kind of, guerrilla style kind of movie here. So we have this guy who, I don't necessarily even know what his job is. He's kind of he's like a hacker kind of deal thing, but he's supposed to bring people these things and whatnot, and he's just kind of hired, and he meets like his boss within like this cafe who never leaves, who gets jobs, and he goes to these things, but he ends up getting mixed up with this really horrible fucking thing where these two gangs are at each other's throats and everything like that. And the director and all the filmmakers in the commentary were saying they kind of wanted to do like their own version of For a Few Dollars More, or Fistful of Dollars, and Yojimbo kind of style thing. These two gangs pit them against each other, but that's not necessarily what we have here. But he goes to meet this woman. All his job is just to to carry this disc and deliver it to somewhere else. But it's not exactly he's being used for some other kind of nefarious means. And what happens is we have this kind of a virus thing that he's being passed on to, and it gets really kind of crazy and creepy and dirty, and he ends up like doing all these kind of weird, kind of crazy things to get out of it. He's a really awkward. I don't necessarily say that's not necessarily what happens trying to get out of it, but he's a bad guy. Like he's a trashy kind of very punk rock anti kind of even character that you'd have as the lead in the movie. He's not really a nice guy. He's not really a likable guy. He's not a traditionally handsome or good-looking guy. He's just this dark, nasty, gritty, very much punk, anti-authoritarian kind of, I don't give a fuck about anything, I'm in it for me, and that's all there is to it. But there is a great scene where he has an interaction with this guy, and I don't want to spoil everything, but it involves like him giving hints at a cure for something, and he gives him a bunch of hints, and the guy just is not catching on. But I thought that was kind of his attitude. He's like, "Oh, I'll get you to water, but I'm not gonna, I'll point you in the direction of water, but I'm not even gonna lead you to it. And I'm certainly not gonna get you to drink it." But that kind of aspect. But yeah, it's weird. It's a weird movie that you think could be like prophetic, like it would predict things. But in the commentary, they mentioned like, people always say like, "I'm so surprised that you predict all these things." He's like, "I'm surprised that we predicted so many things fucking wrong." And they mentioned like trying to make a sequel in the 90s later, and they're like, even by 5-6 years later we couldn't make a sequel because technology had changed. And that's the weird thing, right? When I was talking about Swordfish earlier, like in 2001, the hackers and all that kind of stuff, you're like, oh, this is state of the art. Now it's complete like Microsoft fucking Paint or some shit. It's so outdated, it's so old. And that's the thing, is technology has grown so fast, so quickly. Maybe that's why we're all crazy now with all this social media shit, but it's grown so fast, right? It's like, I know this is a weird reach here, but they said what was the Civil War was so goddamn bloody because the weapons had advanced further than the people's tactical stuff at that time, and they just weren't ready for the weapons they were using. They were whatever. Sometimes wars, the weapons are more advanced than the people's like mentalities and things like that, and it's just bloodbaths are fast, So like we're looking at this, and they're talking about how the technology has advanced so fast it's kind of lost, and the movie is very much a product of its time because of it, with like floppy disk and shit like that, and that's the kind of hacker stuff mentality and dirty, gritty kind of life. It's very much a slice of 1994 Houston, which is cool because a lot of the SOV movies I know were never made in Texas, and I think was 555 a Texas one. I'd have to look, man. I can't remember, but there's some of them. There was that Death one that Intervision put out, which was a Texas one, Death by Love or something like that. That was a Texas SOV. So it's not really the most, the biggest output of SOV movies, but I thought this one was interesting enough and different enough, and it's not necessarily horror, it's more sci-fi, but it's cult 110%. There's a lot of characters in here. There's some good action. There's some shooting and back and forth, and some violence in here. Overall, I like this. No Resistance is definitely worth watching, especially if you're a fan of transgressive SOV films, and I am, ones that get you to think. And this is kind of the thing I was talking about. When SOV horror movies first came out, they were definitely made for the video market. They were made to be put in the video store to kind of cash in, like, Boarding House in a certain way, or Blood Cult. They're kind of there to, or Sledgehammer, to be put in the video store. And they're very much just kind of cheap knockoffs of other slashers or thrillers or something like that. Or they're not necessarily bad, and some of them do try to attempt to be real films, for sure. But when we get to the 90s, we start getting stuff like, Eric Stanze coming in, or Shattered Dead by Scooter McRae, and we start to get this transgressive shit going on. The guy who did like Twisted Issues and shit like that. What was that Red Spirit Lake one or whatever? Like, these movies are less, hey, this is very, palatable for audience. No, this is, hey, I could only afford to make this movie on this. And this is what this kind of is. This is one of these ones that was like, hey, I want to make a movie, I want to make it wild, I want to make it crazy. And the aesthetic of this one probably fits best in SOV, if that makes any sense. I do have a fondness for those really ambitious or really transgressive SOV movies from the 90s. So this fits in there. So as far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary with writer, director Tim Thompson, producer Michael Schneider Jr., writer and actor David Rains, and writer actor Irving Cutter. And then we have another commentary music track with writer director Tim Thompson, producer Michael Schneider, and musician Scott Ayers and Payne Teen. Cyberpunk Yojimbo, interview with director Tim Thompson. No Re, pitch trailer for proposed No Resistance original TV series with commentary if you want. 3 by Drop Frame music video, and Coral Kiss Pain music video by the director, both of White Bunnies. Also by the director. Trailers, reversible cover art. So yeah, weird, wild movie. Doesn't wear out its welcome to. The runtime's pretty good. So good Patreon pick on that one. No resistance. All right, let's get these questions, comments, and concerns. Tyler66. Hey Dave, I'm 69 years old. So you do have older viewers. A testament to your great show. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know why I assumed that. Actually, I was looking at like all the data, and I know a lot of people don't put their numbers in there, but it was like my most like was like 34 to 44. It was like 25 to 34 and 34 to 44 were like the highest like people watch, but a lot of people don't even make accounts or they lie on their numbers, so who knows. And then we have Sophie Bongos. Dirty Work was one of my favorite films growing up and still is. Vinegar Syndrome release of it is the biggest surprise of the year and quite possibly my favorite release. Glad to see someone share the love for it. Man, I love Dirty Work. It's like my favorite comedy ever. I've seen that movie a million times. Angela 150. Dark City and Talk to Me are awesome. Wonderful review, James. Thank you. Audio Love 1976. I loved Welcome to the Dolls and anything with Jennifer Jason Leigh, so thank you for reminding me to watch Palindromes. Drums. I wanted to see it for years but never got around to it. Now it's on 4K and it looks great. Elk Vomit. The Golden Child is a lot of fun. It currently lives on Pluto TV where it seems to be on every day. I'll have to rewatch it. I remember liking it. It's a lot of fun from memory. Movie Junkie Reviews 84. Jade has an awesome car chase scene. So cool. I need to rewatch Jade. I think I only saw it on TV years ago, like an HBO, like one of those like late night sexy time movies. Nick Moore from Belgium. I'm not super into sci-fi, but I remember Dark City being excellent, especially Jennifer Connelly's performance. And again, she's good in everything, even a pool full of corpses. She's always good. I can actually recommend the Dark Half movie. Good movie. Great Stephen King adaptation, and those are few and far in between. You probably already guessed that with your favorite director, George Romero. At the helm, R.I.P. Also great, not on Britannia Alda's whore belt. Isn't she one of the genre's great dames? Yeah, I've seen Dark Half a bunch. Me and my mom used to watch it a lot growing up. She was a huge Stephen King guy. And, we've seen Dark Half. We've seen all the Stephen King movies up to a certain point that came out. Britannia Alda, yeah, what's funny is, like, before I started 82, I'd seen her a bunch of times, and she never registered in my head. Like, oh, that's an actress. But no, like, seeing Girls' Night Out and Amityville Possession, and then I was like, oh man, she also popped up in one of the Fun City releases, and then she's in Dark Half. She's an underrated actress. She's so good. She's a really strong actress and very good in everything. Even if it's just a tiny role, she's solid. Questions. You mentioned Carnival Souls, Messiah of Evil, and Haunting of Julia alongside Let's Scare Jessica to Death, but which one of these is your absolute favorite? Messiah of Evil. And then we'll do a Messiah of Evil. The other ones are all pretty high up, great movies, but Messiah of Evil I like more than all the other ones. I don't know if it's a better movie. I just like it the best. How would you go about making a horror movie about a grief and loss since you mentioned liking Talk to Me while disliking Bring Her Back? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. If I had to do it, how would I do it? I'd make it a comedy. It's the only way I'd do it. I'd make it absolutely funny. Because I have a very dark sense of humor. And my theory is, if you can make them laugh, you can make them cry. So I'd make it a comedy. I think that's comedy adds levity to everything, and I think a lot of these grief movies are missing it. And I think that's why they get old real fucking fast. And sometimes they land, sometimes they don't. Not every movie needs comedy, but the ones I would make have to, because I'm a goofy son of a bitch too. Take it easy next time, God willing. Brian Gulster, hey Dave, been following you, watching your channel forever, love everything you do, man. Hey, thank you. Hey, I was wondering, I'd figured I'd ask, what happened to Fred Vogel / Toteg and Adam Albrecht? How come they stopped filming? Fred still makes movies. I mean, he just did the final interview not too long ago, but Fred is one of these guys that wants to make a movie and take his time with it. Everything has to line up, he has to prepare. He's also got a full-time job and things like that. He's married, he's got a house. So, like, he makes movies in between. Also Brian Paulin, this guy who doesn't just nonstop shoot movies, his jobs, and he gets everything together. So it's a time thing. I think Fred's going to make movies the rest of his life. As far as Adam Albrecht, I really don't know. I think he had an Instagram for a while. I don't know what happened to Adam Albrecht. I really don't. I didn't keep up with him. I made that one movie with him, and I was friendly with him for a short period, but I was never really close with the guy. I didn't know him. Like Fred, I see every time at Wasteland, and I'm friendly with Fred. I'm friends with Fred, but I never really friend with Adam Albrecht. Maybe for a very short period of time in that window, and I don't really know what happened to him, unfortunately. I hope he's all right. Necropsy, so happy you got to enjoy Dark City. It's wild to me this film was not a mainstream blockbuster, but I guess that's just how dumb audiences are. For me, it's a 10 out of 10. Yeah, sometimes movies don't land, and also maybe it was the theatrical cut. It's hard to say. Some movies are great, and they don't get the advertising. Sometimes we're not ready for it, just a victim of circumstances or timing, whatever it is, right? It's great. I loved it too. 9 out of 10, first time view. Ken Coakley, I haven't seen Dark City in quite some time. I remember that I liked it because the city looked like Gotham City back in 99. Warner Brothers was planning a new Batman film called Batman Batman triumphant with Alex Proyas directing a Kurt Russell as Batman, as well as Leah Nielsen as Man-Bat. Sounds fucking awesome. After the failure of Batman and Robin, they wanted to make another dark movie. I remember Rufus Sewell as he works steadily in those days. I used to get him confused with Jude Law. It was also Kiefer Sutherland's best movie since Young Guns 2. He's got the best line of Young Guns 2. I'm going to finish the game, Billy. That whole speech that he gives, you know, I love that. It's my favorite thing in Young Guns 2, where he does that whole thing. He says, every guy runs up and says, the world's coming to an end. First guy says, well, I'm going to go to the mission and pray. Second guy says, I'm going to get myself a couple whores and a bottle of whiskey. Third guy says, finish the game, because they're playing a game, a card game. I forgot. I fucked that story up because I didn't mention they're playing a game in the very beginning. But he runs up there playing a game, and what are you going to do? Finish the game. And that whole scene with Young Guns 2 is probably the best, and that's Kiefer Sutherland's best scene in that movie, I think. Finish the game, Billy. Love that. Music kicks in. This was also a great performance by Bruce Spence and Richard O'Brien as the creepy bastards who snuck in on people while people were sleeping. The set design was pretty reminiscent of The Crow. I caught on right away that the set design was inspired by Metropolis. I saw Dark City long before I got around to seeing The Crow. I boycotted The Crow because of Brandon Lee's death. I just watched Kung Fu, the movie, in which Brandon Lee played David Carradine's long-lost son, but his best performances showed on Little Tokyo. He was hilarious in that film. The day he died, I thought about his next movie and the fact that I was going to see it opening day. Then he was gone. Lee went to Emerson College here in Boston. We had a mutual friend, but we never met. Yeah, Showdown in Little Tokyo. He's great in that back and forth with Dolph Lundgren. It's been years since I watched that one. I'd like to revisit that movie. I remember being very fun. Yeah, you know, I honestly feel like I feel like his performance is shaky in The Crow, but I feel like it's an uncompleted movie. I feel like he didn't get to shoot all his fucking scenes that he did. They had to use scenes they wouldn't normally use. I think the movie's messy because of it. So that's how I feel about it. And I don't blame you for boycotting it. You know, it is a fucked up thing that happened. Now, another movie I really love, Dirty Work. Norm Macdonald was never not funny. Agreed. He proved it in Dirty Work. One of the funniest scenes in the film was Chris Farley going over the jukebox saying he was going to play Street Fighting Man by the Rolling Stones so he could get psyched up for a bar fight. Then he accidentally selects the Pina Colada song. Yeah, for sure. Playing something good? Hell yeah, Rolling Stones, Street Fighting Man, G7. You just hit G8. If you like being, it's that song's called Home. It's by Rupert. What is it? Rupert what? Is it Rupert Holmes? And then the song's called Escape. It's Rupert Holmes, and the song's called Escape. There we go. Another great comedian in the film was Fred Wolf, who played one of the homeless guys. When Norman already paid him and the others to go in the building to cause a distraction, Wolf told McDonald that he was going to scream that the CIA was controlling his mind. No, the scene is this. The other homeless guy who plays in Billy Madison, who's a writer for SNL, says, no, Fred Wolf says that to him. Fred Wolf says, you know, when you jumped on that security guard's back and said the CIA put a chip in my brain, I almost shit my pants. And then the other guy, Martin, I think, he's like, almost, and they give each other 5. That's a brilliant scene. And then he does that line where he's walking through the crowd. He's like, "Did you fart? That must have been me from earlier." Fucking brilliant. But he was a writer for SNL too. Both those guys were. That's why they're great. But yeah, I love Dirty Work. Way Up Dude gives me the thumbs up and everything like that. Yeah, thanks again, everybody. Let's hop into the update. It's only 2 titles, so I'm not going to do the camera change. But first up, we have a 4K of When Evil Lurks. Same director of Terrified, which I really liked. When Evil Lurks, I liked it. Didn't love it. Going to give it a revisit. 4K was on sale. Good enough for me to buy the 4K, so that says something. And another one, getting ready for 83. We have Imprint Asia here. Portrait in Crystal, 1983. Shaw Brothers, kind of horror fantasy movie that I didn't have. Doesn't have a U.S. release, so I got the import here. So yeah, let's get the hell out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.